June 24th, 2009, 11:47 p.m. Michael Jackson is in his bedroom at his rented mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. In less than 13 hours, he'll be dead. But right now, Michael is recording something. His voice, his thoughts, his fears, and what he said on those recordings, tapes that very few people have ever heard, will change everything you think you know about Michael Jackson's final hours. Because Michael didn't just die unexpectedly. He knew something was wrong. He was trying to tell someone. He was leaving clues. And those secret tapes? They reveal a man who was desperate, exhausted, and terrified of the people who were supposed to be protecting him. By the end of this video, you're gonna hear what Michael Jackson really said the night before he died. And you're gonna understand why some people believe those recordings prove Michael's death wasn't an accident. It was something much darker. To understand what Michael was recording, you need to understand where he was in June of 2009. The King of Pop was 50 years old, preparing for his This Is It comeback concerts in London. 50 shows, the biggest comeback in music history. But Michael was struggling. He'd lost a dangerous amount of weight. He was barely sleeping. He was in chronic pain from decades of dancing and old injuries. And he was surrounded by people who needed him to perform, who needed those concerts to happen, who had millions of dollars riding on Michael Jackson getting on that stage. His concert promoter, AEG Live, had invested over $30 million in the production. If Michael couldn't perform, they'd lose everything. His doctor, Conrad Murray, was being paid $150,000 a month to keep Michael healthy enough to rehearse and perform. His staff, his handlers, his entire operation depended on Michael being functional. But Michael wasn't functional. He was falling apart. And according to people close to him, Michael knew it. In the weeks leading up to his death, Michael made several concerning statements. He told his choreographer he was cold all the time, even in 90-degree heat. He told his backup dancers he felt like someone was trying to hurt him. And on the night of June 24th, his final night alive, Michael allegedly recorded himself. Some say it was a voice memo on his phone. Others say it was a message left on someone's answering machine. There are even rumors of a journal entry that was later read aloud and recorded. The exact format doesn't matter. What matters is the content. Because what Michael said in those final hours reveals a man who was afraid, who saw what was coming, who tried to warn people, but nobody listened. June 24th, 2009, early evening. Michael Jackson arrives at Staples Center for what will be his final rehearsal. The footage from that night still exists. You can see it in the This Is It documentary. Michael performing Smooth Criminal, Billie Jean, Earth Song. He looks thin, gaunt even, but he's dancing. He's singing. He's still Michael Jackson. His dancers later said Michael seemed in good spirits that night, tired but focused, determined to make the show perfect. The rehearsal ends around 12:30 a.m. on June 25th. Michael heads home to his rented mansion on North Carolwood Drive. And this is where the timeline gets crucial. According to Dr. Conrad Murray, Michael's personal physician, this is what happened next. Michael gets home around 1 a.m. He takes a shower. He asks Murray for medication to help him sleep. Murray gives him a Valium. Doesn't work. Around 2 a.m., Murray gives Michael an injection of lorazepam. Still can't sleep. At 3 a.m., Murray tries midazolam. Nothing. By 5 a.m., Michael is desperate. He's begging Murray for his milk, his nickname for a Propofol, a powerful anesthetic that Michael had been using as a sleep aid. Murray finally gives in. Around 10:40 a.m. on June 25th, Murray administers Propofol through an IV. And within minutes, Michael Jackson stops breathing. But here's what doesn't add up. If Michael was so exhausted, so desperate for sleep, why was he recording voice memos in the middle of the night? Because according to multiple sources, Michael wasn't just lying in bed waiting for medication. He was talking, recording, documenting. And what he said suggests Michael knew something was very wrong. One alleged recording, described by Michael's biographer J. Randy Taraborelli, captures Michael's voice slurred and barely coherent. He's talking about the concerts, about how he doesn't think he can do it, about how they're pushing him too hard. Michael allegedly says, "They're going to kill me. They're going to work me until I die. They're going to kill me." Now, some people dismiss this as paranoia, drug-induced rambling, Michael being dramatic. But what if he was right? What if Michael Jackson knew exactly what was happening to him? In 2009, a nurse named Sherilyn Lee came forward with a disturbing story. She'd been treating Michael Jackson in the months before his death. Vitamin therapy, natural treatments, alternative medicine. And according to Lee, Michael called her on June 21st, just 4 days before he died. It was 11:30 p.m. Michael sounded desperate. He told Lee he couldn't sleep, that he needed something strong, that nothing was working. Lee said she warned Michael about Propofol. She told him it was dangerous, that it should only be used in hospitals, that people die from it. Michael's response? "I just need to get some sleep. I'm okay. I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. Lee said Michael sounded exhausted, confused, like he was losing touch with reality. She begged him not to use Propofol. She offered to come over and try other methods. Michael said no. He said he had a doctor who would take care of it. That doctor was Conrad Murray. And here's the chilling part. Lee later testified that Michael told her, "All I need is for someone to monitor me while I sleep. Monitor me while I sleep." That's exactly what Conrad Murray claimed he was doing on the morning of June 25th, monitoring Michael while the Propofol worked. Except Murray left the room. He left Michael alone with a lethal dose of Propofol in his system. And when he came back, Michael wasn't breathing. But according to reports that surfaced years later, Michael may have recorded another message after talking to Nurse Lee. A voice memo allegedly found on a phone recovered from Michael's bedroom. In this recording, which has never been publicly released, Michael supposedly talks about feeling trapped, about not being in control of his own life anymore, about people making decisions for him. Michael allegedly says something like, "If something happens to me, know that they did this. Know that I tried to stop it." Now, we have to be careful here. This recording has never been authenticated. It's never been released to the public. We only have secondhand accounts of what it contained. But if it's real, if Michael really said those words, then his death stops being a tragic accident and starts looking like something much more sinister. Let's talk about Propofol for a moment, because understanding this drug is crucial to understanding Michael's death. Propofol is a powerful anesthetic. It's used in hospitals during surgery. It puts you in a deep, immediate unconsciousness. It's not a sleeping pill. It's not a sedative. It's a drug that literally shuts down your consciousness. And it's incredibly dangerous outside of a hospital setting. When you're under Propofol, you can't breathe on your own. Your reflexes shut down. If you vomit, you could choke and die. If your airway gets blocked, you stop getting oxygen. That's why Propofol is only supposed to be used with full monitoring equipment, trained staff, and emergency resuscitation equipment standing by. Conrad Murray had none of that. He was administering Propofol in a bedroom. No proper monitoring equipment, no emergency backup, no nurses or anesthesiologists to help if something went wrong. And something did go wrong. According to Murray's testimony, he gave Michael Propofol around 10:40 a.m. on June 25th. Then, he left the room. Murray claims he was only gone for 2 minutes. He went to the bathroom. When he came back, Michael wasn't breathing. Murray started CPR, called for help. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Michael Jackson was pronounced dead at UCLA Medical Center at 2:26 p.m. The autopsy later revealed lethal levels of Propofol in Michael's system, combined with several other sedatives. The official cause of death: acute Propofol intoxication. In other words, an overdose. Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 2011 and served 2 years in prison. But here's what haunts people who followed this case. Was it really just negligence? Or was there more to the story? Because in the years since Michael's death, several disturbing details have emerged. AEG Live, the concert promoter, was reportedly concerned about Michael's health in the weeks before he died. They'd sent emails asking if Michael could even perform, They discussed contingency plans, but they also pushed forward with the shows. They needed Michael on that stage. Dr. Murray was being paid $150,000 a month, not by Michael, but by AEG. So, who was Murray really working for? Michael? Or the people who needed Michael to perform? And if Michael was recording messages about feeling trapped, about being pushed too hard, about fearing for his life, who was he trying to warn? Here's something most people don't know. There's a gap in the timeline of Michael Jackson's final hours. Conrad Murray says he administered Propofol at 10:40 a.m., but Michael's personal assistant, Michael Amir Williams, says he received a phone call from Murray at 12:13 p.m. saying Michael had a bad reaction and needed help. That's an hour-and-a-half gap. What happened during that time? Murray claims he was trying to revive Michael, doing CPR, trying to get him breathing again. But there are problems with Murray's timeline. First, Murray didn't call 911 immediately. He called Michael's assistant first. Second, phone records show Murray was making calls during this period. Calls to his girlfriend, calls to his office, calls that lasted several minutes. How was he doing CPR and making phone calls at the same time? Third, when paramedics arrived, Murray initially didn't tell them about the Propofol. He mentioned other drugs, but not the one that actually killed Michael. Why? Because Murray knew that admitting he'd given Michael Propofol outside of a hospital setting would destroy his career and possibly send him to prison, which is exactly what happened. But here's the bigger question. What happened between midnight and 10 a.m. that morning? Because if Michael was recording messages, voice memos, phone calls, whatever they would have been made during those hours, Michael's phone was seized as evidence. So were his computers, his journals, his personal belongings. And according to people involved in the investigation, there were recordings found on Michael's devices, but they were never released publicly. Why? The official explanation is that they contained private, personal information, family matters, things that weren't relevant to the criminal case. But some people believe the real reason those recordings were buried is because they contained information that was too damaging, too controversial. Information about Michael being pressured to perform when he was too sick. Information about doctors over-medicating him to keep him functional. Information about people around Michael who cared more about money than his health. If those recordings exist, and multiple sources say they do, they paint a picture of a man who was trapped in a system he couldn't escape. A man who knew he was being used. A man who tried to speak up but nobody would listen. And a man who, in his final hours, tried to leave evidence of what was being done to him. In 2016, a book called Remember the Time, Protecting Michael Jackson in His Final Days was published. It was written by two of Michael's bodyguards, Bill Whitfield and Javon Beard. And in that book, they describe finding Michael writing in journals constantly in his final months. Late at night, early in the morning, whenever he couldn't sleep, Michael would write about his fears, his dreams, his observations about the people around him. According to the bodyguards, Michael didn't trust many people. He'd been burned too many times, betrayed by family, exploited by business partners, lied about in the media. So he kept his real thoughts private in those journals, and when Michael died, those journals disappeared. Some were seized by investigators, some were taken by family members, some just vanished. But pieces of them have surfaced over the years. Quotes, excerpts, second-hand descriptions of what they contained. And according to people who've read them, Michael's final journal entries are heartbreaking. He wrote about feeling weak, about his body failing, about not being able to sleep no matter what he tried. He wrote about the pressure of the This Is It concerts, about feeling like he couldn't back out, couldn't say no, couldn't disappoint people. He wrote about his children Prince, Paris, and Blanket, about wanting to be around for them, about fearing he wouldn't make it. One entry, allegedly written just days before his death, reportedly said something like, "I'm so tired. My body can't take this anymore. But they won't stop. They need me to be Michael Jackson, They won't let me just be Michael. They won't let me just be Michael. If that's really what Michael wrote, it reveals the central tragedy of his life. He was never allowed to be human. He had to be the king of pop. The greatest entertainer who ever lived. The icon. The legend. But he was just a man. A man who was tired, sick, in pain. And when he tried to express that, when he tried to slow down, people pushed him harder. Because too many people depended on Michael Jackson, the brand, not Michael Jackson, the person. And in the end, the brand killed the person. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room, the conspiracy theories. Because ever since Michael died, there have been people who believe his death wasn't an accident, that it was planned, that he was murdered. And those secret recordings, they're often cited as evidence. The most common theory goes like this. Michael Jackson was worth more dead than alive. His catalog of music, his image rights, his estate, all of it would generate billions of dollars after his death, without Michael taking a cut. And there were people, business partners, creditors, investors, who would benefit financially from Michael dying. Add in the fact that Michael allegedly made recordings saying he feared for his life, that he was being pushed too hard, that they were going to kill him, and you have the foundation of a conspiracy theory. Now, let's be clear. There's no concrete evidence of a murder plot. No proof that anyone intentionally killed Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, not murder. The jury found that Murray's negligence killed Michael, not malice. But negligence can be a form of murder, can it? If you're being paid $150,000 a month to keep someone alive, and you administer a lethal dose of a dangerous drug and then leave the room, is that really an accident? Or is it something worse? The problem is, we'll probably never know the full truth. Those secret recordings, if they exist in the form people claim, have never been released. The full investigative files remain sealed. Key witnesses have changed their stories or refused to talk. And Michael Jackson, the only person who really knew what happened in that bedroom, is gone. But here's what we do know for certain. Michael Jackson spent his final weeks in pain, exhausted, and afraid. He was surrounded by people who needed him to perform, who had financial stakes in his success. He was being given dangerous drugs by a doctor who should have known better. And he died alone, in a bedroom, from a drug that should never have been used outside a hospital. Whether you believe in conspiracy theories or not, one thing is undeniable. Michael Jackson's death was preventable. Someone should have said no. Someone should have stopped the concerts. Someone should have put Michael's health above the money. But they didn't. And the king of pop paid the ultimate price. But there's one more recording that deserves attention, one final piece of audio that actually has been released publicly, and it's the most disturbing of all. In 2009, shortly after Michael's death, TMZ released a recording of Michael's voice, slurred, barely coherent, rambling. In the recording, Michael talks about his vision for the world, about helping children, about creating the greatest show anyone has ever seen. But he sounds drugged, out of it, not himself. TMZ claimed the recording was made weeks before Michael died, during a period when he was heavily medicated. And it raises a horrifying question. If Michael was this impaired, this out of it, how was he supposed to perform 50 concerts? How was anyone looking at Michael Jackson in this condition and thinking, yes, he's ready to do the biggest comeback tour in history? The answer is, they weren't looking at Michael's well-being. They were looking at the money. $85 million in ticket sales, sponsorship deals, merchandise, movie rights. The This Is It tour was going to be the most profitable comeback in entertainment history. And if Michael couldn't handle it, if his body gave out, well, there was always Propofol. Just one more injection. Just enough to get through rehearsal. Just enough to make it to the next show. Until there was one injection too many. And Michael Jackson, the greatest entertainer who ever lived, died in a bedroom alone at 50 years old. His final recorded words on that TMZ audio were about his dreams, about what he wanted to accomplish, about the future. Just like Elvis Presley's final words, Michael's last recordings were filled with tomorrow. Not goodbye, tomorrow But Michael didn't get a tomorrow. He got Propofol, and it killed him. So what do Michael Jackson's secret recordings tell us? They tell us that fame is a prison, that success can be a death sentence, that the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most. Michael Jackson spent his entire life trying to make people happy, trying to be perfect, trying to live up to impossible expectations. And in the end, those expectations killed him. The recordings, whether they're voice memos, journal entries, or phone calls, reveal a man who was desperate, who was losing control, who saw what was happening but couldn't stop it. Michael tried to tell people. He tried to slow down. He tried to say no, but nobody listened because they needed Michael Jackson, the performer, not Michael Jackson, the person. And when the person couldn't keep up with the performer, they gave him drugs. They pushed him harder. They told him he could do it until he couldn't. Michael Jackson's secret tapes are a tragedy, not because of what they reveal about his death, but because of what they reveal about his life. A life spent in service to everyone except himself. A life where his value was measured in ticket sales and album numbers instead of his humanity. A life where the only way to escape the pressure was to stop breathing. And that's the real crime of Michael Jackson's death. Not the Propofol, not Conrad Murray's negligence, but the system that made a man so desperate for sleep that he'd risk his life just to get a few hours of peace. Michael Jackson died 15 years ago. But those secret recordings, whether we ever hear them in full or not, remind us of something important. Behind every icon is a human being. Behind every legend is a person with fears, pain, and limits. Michael Jackson wasn't invincible. He was vulnerable, mortal, human, and the people around him forgot that. They saw dollar signs instead of a man who needed help. They saw a brand instead of a father who wanted to watch his children grow up. They saw the king of pop instead of Michael, who just wanted to sleep. And now Michael is gone. And those recordings remain locked away, evidence of a tragedy that should never have happened. If this story opened your eyes to the truth about Michael Jackson's final hours, if it made you think about the cost of fame, subscribe to King of Pop and hit that notification bell. We've got more untold stories about Michael, his life, his music, and his legacy coming your way. And let us know in the comments, do you think those secret recordings should be released or should they stay private? Stay tuned for more content. Long live the King of Pop.